Hello, Dave.
Hey, you knew it's me on the other end of the line when you heard the music, I guess.
Yeah, so you found the music controls.
Found the music controls again. We've got the theme tune up, and hey, it's good to be back.
So Andy heard that you had played some music when Jess was here,
Right.
and he had a field day last week with the music. He every time their guest came on, he was playing some music. Then he was like, "Oh no, actually, go off the screen. I need you. I want to pick a different song because that one wasn't very good, and we'll bring you in again." Honestly, Andy couldn't control the man.
Oh, brilliant! Brilliant.
But welcome, Point Sippers. Welcome, Dave. We have Dave back to get today.
It's always good to come back. I say yes to anything, but everything, unless it's highly illegal.
No, we love to see you. You're like the Pour and Sip's greatest friend. You're always here. Can't have a few lives without seeing Dave at least once or twice. And no, Jess is off to Croatia, I think, last night, and Andy's drumming tonight. But you are both host and guest tonight. Once again,
a host and yes, that's good. That's cool. We've got some really cool whiskey. I just looked in the box. Well, I looked in the box a little earlier while getting some prep, and got some great little whiskies in here. I mean, 3 of them I know reasonably well, but 2 of them are new to me, so it's very new to me. So that's really cool. I've got some great guests today, all from the other side of the pond as well.
Indeed, yeah, we definitely have some great guests. Reading some of the comments here. Some people, I think, had looked in their box already. Others have just opened it earlier, an hour or so ago, and saying, "Oh, we're going stateside." Yes, we are. Howdy, partners, says Malcolm Tucker. Callisto is just back online after an all-afternoon power cut. So, yes, that is well-timed. We have Sharon Atkins, who's saying, "Good evening, all. This is our first time joining. We're looking forward to it. Hello, Sharon Atkins and co. If it's our, yeah, nice." People saying, "Welcome to Sharon." People saying it's very hot. It is very hot. I'm very hot. I'm melting in here. I hope your room is more comfortable than mine. I know yours gets very hot, Dave, because we do some of these together.
Yep, it's 34.3 in here at the moment.
Yeah, I think we're going to ask maybe at the end some of our American friends, if who are more used to these temperatures, what their top tips are, because other than just having aircon.
Yeah, well, I did spend 7 years working out in the Far East when the mean high temperature was 36 degrees. So the boatyard would have been a lot hotter than this, but you do get acclimatized to it, that's for sure. I mean, it never bothered me at the end after 7 years, but yeah, going back into air-conditioned offices was always nice. But yeah, most of the time the boats were never air-conned, not until they got into the ocean and started priming everything up. Right, should we get some whiskey in the glasses and guests in the room?
That's plenty from us, right? Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, let's crack on. Yeah, let's bring in our first guest and get into our first round.
Let's do that then.
Usually I've cracked these open a little bit earlier, but the wax is so warm. It's like usually like a satisfying crack open. It was just sort of like eased apart. Hello, Amanda.
Hello. I can't believe it's as warm where you are as it is where I am. 34 degrees.
It's wild. I've got these 2 glasses of water in front of me, and usually I don't even get to the second one. I've nearly drunk the whole of the first one, and we're like 2 minutes into the stream. But hello, tell us where you're coming to us from, and yeah, a little about you and what you do.
My name is Amanda Beckwith. I am the lead blender and director of liquid development at Virginia Distillery Company. So I am indeed in Virginia, stateside, and I am very passionate and obsessed with single malts. So our distillery, Virginia Distillery Company, is traditional in a lot of unique ways. We hired mentors from the UK to come over and help build our distillery. Harry Coburn, the engineer and then distillery manager at the Bowmore, was our actual engineer as well. And so he did the whole layout and design of our distillery, helped set us up with beautiful four-side stills. So we have that kind of in our DNA. And we've been releasing whiskey. We waited about a decade before launching. So we started with the Courage and Conviction line behind me, releasing that in 2020. And we also have what we call the VDC, or Virginia Distillery Company line. And so everybody has the Blue Ridge, which is kind of Virginia in a glass, to kick us off. Yes, thank you. I should have a bottle of it, but I realize it's sitting on my desk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very warm at the moment. I should go and have got some ice.
You know, I've even had it in hot toddies, and it does still taste good warm, but I do prefer it more room temperature in a cooler way.
Yes, I prefer it
on the rocks. Yeah, this one is 46.3% ABV for bottling. I keep it a little high, so that 92 proof and change. It's really great if you add a couple drops of water, have it on the rocks, even do it in a cocktail. But I was really inspired to show off what Virginia is. So even though our ingredients are very simple for whiskey, water, yeast, and barley, it's really the barrels or the casks where I get to have a lot of fun. And I was raised to focus on creating a gentle dram. That was really what I studied, and making sure that the fermentation esters get to shine through. So hopefully when everyone's nosing this and then starting to taste, they're getting things like orchard fruit. I get apple, pear. There's lighter tropical notes kind of hanging out on the sidelines too. And that's because this whiskey was aged for its first 6 years in ex-bourbon barrels. So by law, in the US, bourbon and rye have to age in new charred oak, but American single malt does not. So it's more sustainable, and I think more respectful to the barley, in my point of view, to let it have this gentle maturation without overwhelming it with tannins and aggressive oak. But then I moved the whiskey over to finish. And in this case, for the whole Virginia Distillery Company line, it's a lot of cask finishing, where Courage and Conviction is all primary maturation. So this one is finished in new toasted Virginia oak.
Now, obviously, you've touched on loads of things I want to ask you about. I'm just trying to look at the comments coming in. Oh, running order, that would be good, wouldn't it? So yeah, obviously we're starting with Virginia. Then we're going to speak to Alan, our second guest, for the Jaywalk Rye. And then Dave here is going to talk to us about Butler's Bond. So yes, I think you can see it in the description. We are concentrating on the American ones, and then we're gonna Dave and I'll quickly chat about the other two at the end. Yes, so I mean, American single malt, full stop, is going to be maybe a new one on some of our members, right? And it's been on like a bit of a journey, hasn't it? And I think you guys have pretty much been there from day one, very much on that journey. So do you want to, from your point of view, sort of say a bit about that?
I would love to. It's true. In the US, even today, when someone says single malt, they're likely to think of a Scotch. And in a lot of cases, even like a peated Scotch. There's this really weird American hang-up where we're fighting to introduce them to what single malts are. So by law, single malt can be made in any country, and each country has its own legal definition. The United States was very sluggish about ratifying it as an official category. It took a long time. Our distillery is founding members of this American Single Malt Commission. We got a group of different American single malt distilleries together. We played nicely in the sandbox and kind of created a criteria list. And it took a decade. And finally, in 2025, it was locked in. So the single actually refers to a single location, which was what made me fall in love with single malt in the first place, because you really get a sense of place. And malts, 100% barley, is the easiest mash bill to remember. And then from there are other sub qualifications. It can be aged in an oak vessel no greater than 700 liters. Little things like that, distilled to no greater than 1 strength, bottled at no less than 1. But that kind of is generic and falls into a lot of American whiskey standards. So when I'm talking about American single malt, I'm talking about 100% barley from a single location. And we distill and we age and we even bottle all on site. So that really doubles down on that sense of place, which I love. But interestingly, there is no age minimum.
Right.
for
I was
single malt.
about to say, because
You make me happy.
Which is fascinating because we have a couple little things in the United States. For example, if a whiskey is less than 4 years old, it has to say it on the label.
Yeah.
Nothing that I bottle is younger than 6 these days. And 6 years in Virginia is very much like 18 years in Scotland as far as the dynamic of aging in this very intense environment where we have very high highs and very low lows. We hit at least 40 degrees Celsius every year. Our barrels see some heat. And we also get crazy. Yes, it's brutal. It is brutal. 108 Fahrenheit easily. So our barrels are getting a workout because they can see expansion and contraction multiple times in a day. 2 Aprils ago, I was out in a t-shirt and shorts, and the very next day it snowed 3 inches. That means more color and flavor and depth of richness to the whiskey very naturally and very quickly. We don't use caramel color. We don't use petite barrels. The smallest casks we age in are ex-bourbon barrels, which are 52 or 53 gallons, 200 liters. And then we go up in size to 500 liters sherry casks. That's the largest I use. So yeah, very natural aging, but 6 to 10 years is my prime window.
You have quite a high angle share there, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah. The evaporation is the heartbreaking side. It's wonderful to get this richness of depth very naturally, but we lose an average of 3 to 6% out of a barrel every year. So I could wait 20 years like they can in Scotland or other places and have bone dry casks. And I don't want the whiskey to be over oaked. So that's a big part of my job, getting that balancing act between the orchard fruit and spice that kind of defines our house style.
So yeah, we had Malcolm Tucker coming in with a question about how is it true that American whiskey doesn't have to be matured in casks? So you've sort of you covered that. Yes.
Yeah, unlike in Scotland, 3 years minimum. Yeah, the US has requirements though. So you might hear things like straight or bottled and bond, and all of those things come with age requirements. So yes, not only does it have to say if it's younger than 4 years, if you see straight, you know it's aged at least 2 years. If it says bottled and bond, you know it's at least 4. So there are extra weird subcategories with American whiskey. We're strange like that.
What was the rules for single malt in America before the ratification last year?
There were none, but what happened was there's malt whiskey. So by law, bourbon, one of the requirements is that the mash bill needs to be 51% corn or more, rye, 51% rye or more. So a malt whiskey, an American malt whiskey, not single, had to have at least 51% barley in the mash bill. And so people would talk about that.
Which makes perfect sense next to other American categories. But
right?
on like a Scotch single malt kind of point of view, it's like, what? Yeah, it's...
Did that barley need to be malted, though?
Not necessarily. That wasn't in the TTB handbook or any of the regs that I read, which was really interesting.
Yes, but that's what I understood. It didn't even need to be malted. Yeah.
Yeah, you're correct.
Yeah.
It often was because that was kind of ideal for the process and preservation, but yeah.
Now, the first records of ever being written down for distilling began in Virginia as well, didn't it?
Yes. Yes, it's called Berkeley Plantation. It's outside of Richmond. It is an hour and 50 minutes from where I am right now. Wow. And the other claim to fame apparently is the first Thanksgiving on record was held there. But yes, they distilled a corn whiskey and aged it right there.
George Thorpe.
Yes.
Yeah. He didn't survive very long, though, did he? He got scalped for upsetting the local.
He did. Yeah. The Native Americans were being horribly taken advantage of in that area, and they were fighting back.
Well, that was the beginning of the atrocities, really. His death was avenged hundreds-fold, wasn't it?
It's very heartbreaking. Yes. We still have some Native American tribes here in Virginia that some are very close to our distillery, and they will have events, and you can go out and learn from them and hear their stories, and it's incredible what they've gone through.
If you're at home after this show, I mean, do Google the distillery online and go to the website, because the pictures of the distillery in the rolling hills at the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains is just idyllic.
Yeah, it is. It makes me happy to drive into work and to see the mist lying low over the hills. And yes, you guys can go to vadistillery.com and you can geek out and take a little fun course that I created, because I found that in the UK, there's a lot more education around spirits, and in Asia as well, they're just a lot more informed. But in Virginia and other parts of the US, there's this comfort blanket around bourbon where a lot of the whiskey knowledge has gone there. And so many people don't even understand that bourbon is a type of whiskey, just like rye is just like single malts. So I've created something called American Single Malt Academy. And you can go to ASM Academy online and take a free fun little course and learn about single malts from all over the world. I think I talk about the Cotswolds Distillery in one of the videos. I don't know if it's still part of that or been moved out to another chapter, but yeah.
That's a great little course, and if you do well in it, they'll send you a certificate and a little badge as well.
It's true.
Yeah.
It was fun to
do
create
this.
that.
Yeah. Very good. I went through it. Yeah, it's a well put together course, and certainly if you didn't know anything about whiskey, it's a great little course. Yes, it's just fun to do.
It's interesting because the entire nation of Scotland can fit inside Virginia with room to spare, but Virginia just doesn't even have a reputation for whiskey, and Scotland has 5 recognized regions, arguably 6. And so I think part of my goal with creating that course was to showcase not just what Virginia can do, but what other states are doing and how different it is, but also to showcase there are incredible single malts coming from Taiwan and England and Canada. And it's just really cool to showcase how there is so much great storytelling and quality out there.
I mean, there were distilleries in Virginia back in time, weren't there? There must have been thousands of distilleries and the farm distilleries, but everything disappeared in Prohibition.
Yes, what happened was really fascinating. In the 1700s, thousands of Scots-Irish immigrants came through the east coast of the colonies, and they settled in parts of Pennsylvania and Virginia. It was this beautiful valley area, the Shenandoah, where a lot of people stayed, and they were farmers who brought their knowledge of farming, but also distillation for grain preservation. And one man, James Anderson, came over, and he had grown barley for the largest Scottish distilleries at the time. And he was hired to be George Washington's farm manager at Mount Vernon in Virginia. And James Anderson, he convinced Washington, who drank a lot of whiskey and Madeira and rum and lots of things, to start a whiskey distillery. And the plan was to do it in the malting style that he'd been doing in the UK. But the rocky soil was just not conducive to growing barley. So he pivoted, like a lot of the farmers were in Pennsylvania, and he started growing rye. So the largest commercial distillery in the 1700s, after the US became a nation, was at Mount Vernon, and it was a rye whiskey. The mash bill that I read about, the original one, was 96% rye, 4% barley, because they needed those enzymes from the barley to do the conversion to alcohol. I got very geeky, I'm sorry.
No, I'm loving it.
No, me too. I remember reading, there's a census somewhere, like thousands of distilleries in Virginia in the 1800s.
Thousands. And at the time, Kentucky wasn't even a state. So the Virginia and Tennessee territories went western. And so all those farmers were doing the same thing. They were trying to find what would grow well, and corn worked really well for those parts of Tennessee and now Kentucky. And so that's why we see this rise in what eventually becomes bourbon. It just made sense. And the common container for transport and storage was the barrel. So it really was interesting, because once Prohibition hit, you saw a lot of these distilleries die or go underground. A handful got medicinal licenses so they could keep going. And then we had the end of World War II. Everybody has moved on to stainless steel and glass and plastics. And at that point, the Coopers Guild lobbied the US government and said, no one is buying our barrels, help. And it wasn't until the 60s that the final regulations for bourbon were locked in. And part of those regulations were, by law, bourbon and rye must age in new charred oak. Or before the 40s, that wasn't even a thought. They were reusing those barrels again and again.
Right.
Yeah,
And trying them to clean them out from
I think that sort of bourbon, like the permanence of bourbon is now, maybe from afar, but I think in America as well, to some extent, that it seems like this thing's always been there, and
right?
It's quite extraordinary when you sort of start to dig into the quite relatively recent history.
It's true. It's really just a few generations that.
Yeah, amazing. I'm going to read out some of the tasting notes that are coming through for the whiskey. We've got. You scroll up a little bit. Dave Walcott kicked us off with, he was getting wafts of vanilla, he was getting some of those orchard fruits, some toasted papaya on the nose. Malcolm Tucker was getting toffee apples, yeah, cinnamon, ginger biscuits. Clive Hampton saying, yeah, he's getting some sweet honey on the nose, so caramel, toffee, finding it quite light. It's nice for this weather, I think.
Yes.
Milk Romager is saying it's like a delicious cross between a light Highland Scotch and a classic bourbon. Nice and sweet, got some toasted flavour, and definitely, yeah, that vanilla and orchard fruits. Some people are saying, Dave again, getting some Sauternes wine, some sort of like initial sweetness there, some clove. We've got Chris who's saying, I think this is when we were talking about like 40 degrees heat, saying absolutely roasting, but also this whiskey has a lovely taste. We have some fruit flavored toffee candies. Got some spicy grain, some more fresh ginger and toffee people are getting, some tropical fruit. Malt Rummager saying, interesting that you can use green barley like Irish pot still. So I think that was when we're talking about the barley whiskey definition. So probably good to make sure this is 100% malted barley, as we understand single malt. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But yes, for that American malt whiskey, yes, it is fascinating. I love those notes. I think what was really satisfying was to hear the comparison of that bridging the gap between Scottish single malts and bourbon, because that was the goal. The goal was to find something that would help bring bourbon lovers into single malt world with that little bit of familiarity with the new oak and that vanillin coming through, but also those people calling out the tropical fruit notes. You made me very happy. We used 2 yeast strains for that very purpose of really driving up the character.
Is it the toasted Virginia oak that's given that spiciness to it? Because that spiciness doesn't come across just the bourbon cask.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's that toasted oak that's given that spicy kick to it. Yeah. So it's just like
to find those casks. I found a local cooperage right across the border from Virginia into West Virginia, and they started by creating a company to build houses for people who'd been displaced due to flooding, and they wanted to continue keeping people employed, and they pivoted to making casks, and they got quite a bit of money coming in from people just volunteering, and we wanted to support them, so we've been looking at ways to give back, and they were very open to working with me. And they did 2 years of seasoning outside. They did toast trials. I picked 4 different toast levels for this, and I got to go and watch these casks be coopered and then transported them back to Virginia to use them. So it was a really unique project, and we got World Whiskey Awards Best American Single Malt and then Best Whiskey for this one. So we were very tickled that it did so well this year.
Because we haven't, and I think, we need to mention that. It's just won a big gold, isn't it? It's got a gold and best in class and then, everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I came to visit you. I popped over to Manchester and then came down to London for the show with you that very week after that.
Yeah, that's right. It was. You just got awarded it just before, didn't you? That's right. Yeah.
It's funny, you mentioned Manchester. Malcolm Tucker's saying that he tasted 4 different cask types of Virginia Distillery at his local whiskey bar in Manchester.
Oh, which one? That's awesome.
Yeah, you have to let us know, Malcolm. He is saying that the Blue Ridge was his second favourite, but that his favourite was he's called it the nominal cider cask. So it was Calvados, the Leads, apple brandy, and cider casks.
Yes,
I'm impressed.
Explosion. Yeah,
good knowledge. Yes,
that's the
one. The cider cask is near and dear to my heart.
That's very popular over here. Yeah, the cider cask, because Scotch whiskey can't use a cider cask. I know it's all cider cask. It's apple brandy and Calvados. I love the way that you do the world and the new world of those the VDC line, which I really love. It's a great story to tell. But that cider cask goes down very well everywhere when we bring that out, because it's just so, it really does bring those orchard notes right front and center, doesn't it?
It does. And I think barley plays really well with those notes because it is so gentle and that toasty richness. I mean, I get that biscuit honey quality too. So, yes.
This is all American malt as well, isn't it?
It is North American. Some of the barley was grown in Saskatchewan, Canada. So we work with over 600 farmers now throughout North America. And the guidelines are it needs to be 2-row, pale distiller's malts We oversee the malting. We work with a couple different malting houses, and yeah, all from North America.
Perfect.
Has got a real like frangipane kind of like nice peach apricot intertropical thing about it. Malcolm's saying it's the Elysium in Princess Street in Manchester. Right.
Oh, lovely. That makes me happy.
I'll be up
It is,
there.
yeah, it is this sort of maybe more than other American single malt distilleries. It does seem to be kind of this quite Scottish style setup, but very much of America, because like you were explaining before, I think hopefully everyone was paying attention when you were explaining how 6 years in your climate with
Yes.
heat, but then the changes in temperature and it's being pulled in out of the oak, the evaporation is so much more. It's just a completely different maturation environment.
It's true. I found that there's a lot of expertise in Scotland, and I would be foolish to try to go off on my own and do my own thing when I know that there's a reason behind all of that technique and quality. But where I get to really pivot is showcasing Virginia's climate and the casks, and where those stories make sense to come into play. So I think I'm standing on the shoulders of giants in a lot of ways, especially trying to do Harry Coburn proud and Dr. Jim Swan. But then I get to take a look around and create these relationships with local cideries, breweries, wineries. And I studied in France, and I did a lot of brandy training. So I try to bring that point of view in with my blending style. And I do slow water reduction because of that. And I think about different areas of the cask house to have more humid aging in different areas versus more dry. So all of that comes into play, and I'm really grateful for all of that expertise that I was able to soak up. I'm still learning.
What should we be asking, Dave?
Well, I mean, I just found out, I was looking out for those references that we were talking about. Yeah, I found 1810 census, there were more than 3,600 distilleries operating in the state of Virginia alone. I knew I'd written it down somewhere.
Yeah, and most of them were farmers.
Yeah.
So this was a part of their way to preserve their grain or to trade and save money that way.
Yeah. And George Washington's distillery was a rum distillery, wasn't it? Until the British cut that molasses off.
There was rum production, yes. And Thomas Jefferson also had a whiskey distillery at Poplar Forest. He never sold any of it. It was just something that the enslaved people got to have a little bit of because they were doing most of the work. And then some of his guests got to have some. But he never sold a drop, to my knowledge.
And that Mount Vernon distillery has been put back together, hasn't it?
It has.
Rebuilt.
Yes. It's run by a foundation of the Ladies of Mount Vernon Society is actually what it's called. And
so cool.
So it's a nonprofit, and doing the right. Started tweaking the mash bill a bit, adding more barley and aging it up longer. And they do a release every year. And you can go and see the grist mill if you come and visit.
Very cool. Very cool. Oh yeah. What else? Yeah,
Well,
I mean, the whole range of everything that you more or less everything you do. Like 50, I think you remember telling me 50% of everything of the new make spirit goes into first fill bourbon cask, new bourbon cask. And you, Virginia being next door to Kentucky, you have these access to first fill bourbon casks that we don't seem to have so much these days. Everybody wants first fill bourbon casks, and there's an awful lot of whiskey made in Scotland these days, and so most things get flat pack made into refill hoggies. So you have that access to first fill bourbon casks, which makes a huge difference in single malt whiskey for what you're doing. And 50% of all your production goes into first fill bourbon. That's what I think you remember, and 25% into sherry.
Ooh, so yes, about half of our whiskey is aging in first fill bourbon barrels. The sherry large, interesting because it's about 25% of the Courage and Conviction line goes into sherry.
Right.
So they don't come into play quite as much because they're not used in the VDC line. So I would say probably 15 to 18% of our inventory is in sherry casks of some sort. I even experiment with Amontillado, Manzanilla. I have a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, we spoke about Amontillado before, didn't we? Because that's my favourite
I think
sherry.
I need to bring you a bottle next time I come visit.
We need some Amontillado finished.
It's lovely.
Yes. I've just finished a bottle from somebody else recently, Amontillado, and it was so good. Hi. Excellent.
So before we say goodbye for now, what's sort of in the pipeline? Can you give us a sneak peek as to what's upcoming with the distillery?
Yes. So right now I'm working on what we're calling Decadence. And you might guess, because decade is in the first part of that name, it is a 10-year minimum aged whiskey release just to kind of celebrate. We've been around for well over a decade, but I've never done a 10-year age statement before. And so that is something that I just finished blending yesterday. And I'm doing a slow reduction to bring it to 55% ABV, so 110 proof, and should be bottling it towards the early part of the fall.
Oh, wow.
That sounds pretty mega. Is any of that going to make it to the UK?
I hope so. I will definitely set aside a few bottles to bring over.
And cigar malt as well. That needs to come back up here.
I have a little bit left of my current bottle.
Yeah, we need some of that over. I bagsied one of them when they come over. Yeah.
It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's very good. Yes, I remember you treating me that at the show, and think it's a superbly crafted blend. Yeah.
Thank you. It was really fun to do that. I felt like I was putting myself in a bottle, and it's a fun challenge.
Aye, that was excellent.
Well, Malt Rum, just before we do get your thoughts on this comment, it's a Malt Rum just saying, I always thought the spiciness of classic bourbon was mainly down to the corn rye mash bill, but it seems maybe that the toasted virgin oak was doing some of the heavy lifting.
It absolutely can. I think it depends. There can be some very soft rye and some very spicy rye. So yeah, it's really fun to be able to see and play. And I think having different toast levels, you can really extract different things that you want to bring out from the chemical structure of the barrel. So I had fun experimenting and learning from that. And it is nice to know that there are flavor dials you can play with, even if you are committed to all barley.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Amanda.
My pleasure.
Been fantastic. If you're able to stick around, then maybe we'll see you in a bit.
Absolutely. See you guys later.
Lovely to see you. Hope to see you again at the end. Right. Oh, wrong one. Wrong one.
Oh.
I can't see.
We'll say goodbye backstage then for a second, yeah.
Oh dear, I messed up there, didn't I?
I was just saying it's a cracking start.
Yeah, it's like a cracking start. Yeah. I'm obviously I've been talking about this brand as well. So in fact, all three brands I know quite well. These first three brands. So
yeah, I mean, they're talking about tastings in Manchester bars now. Well, why not? In the comments.
I think I'm up that way in a couple of weeks' time. So look out. I'm in Chester. I'm definitely in Chester. I'm in Liverpool. I'm doing American whiskey. I think I'm going to do an American whiskey tasting, or maybe it's a rye whiskey tasting up in Liverpool.
You do love a rye.
It's got to be rye. Should we talk about rye?
We should probably talk about some rye. What was I going to say? Oh, just simply that. Yeah, obviously that Virginia and all the other whiskies are in the member store with a handsome discount. But yeah, if you want to check out the rest of the Virginia range or their Courage and Conviction range, which Amanda and Dave were talking about there as well. Yeah, a lot of it's over on Master of Malt. Lots of it available in the UK now, which is fab. Let's drink some rye, shall we?
Let's get some rye and bring our second guest in.
Hello, Anna.
Good evening. Great. Good to see you both.
Dave's been getting very, very excited about rye in the last, I don't know, certainly the last few months.
Oh, I fell in love with rye back in 2014, I think, and I'm a huge fan of rye.
What was it that did it for you?
The first rye I ever tasted was one of Patrick Van Zedam from the Netherlands, Millstone Distillery. That's the first rye, and that opened my eyes up to rye, and that's 100% rye, 50-50. And I just explored categories. I have something like 60 different bottles bottles of rye around me downstairs from all around the world. And yeah.
It's
And
extraordinary,
obviously-
I remember when, certainly over here, there was probably count the amount of different ryes you get on one hand, and now Dave was posting a different rye bottle every day of January and February. But welcome, Alan. It's fantastic to have you here. Can you sort of introduce yourself a little bit to our members?
With pleasure. Well, behind me is our still room. I'm here in the Bushwick neighborhood of Brooklyn at the company I co-founded in 2011 called New York Distilling Company. And we opened with forethought, with the express purpose of being distillers of rye whiskey and gin. And it was certainly a different time, but my background was in the reemergence of cocktail culture here at first, and then nationally, and to a significant degree over time, internationally as well. And we always were thinking about fostering our own need to be creative on one side, but the other idea was sharing a bit of heritage, history, but also forethought in our purposefulness of the types of spirits that we want to make. And so in the context of rye whiskey, and just as you said, Dave, same scenario here, in the early 2000s, to give a timestamp, there were 5, maybe 6 prominent, reasonably available brands of rye whiskey. And I would say most of them, by my taste, were very good whiskeys. They were all from Kentucky, and stands to reason. Our favorite bourbon producers from Kentucky really preserved, if not saved, the heritage of rye whiskey by continuing to create brands. And I use that word specifically because the brands themselves were the names that had existed, whether for decades or centuries, but the recipes were wholly different than in their origins. And it stands to reason the Kentucky distillers' primary concern and expertise continues to be bourbon, of course. And I love bourbon. I put that squarely on the table. I love whiskey and bourbon amongst them. But all of those Kentucky rye whiskey brands were at a 51, 52% rye mash bill, the legal minimum for American rye whiskey. And as the evolution of what here in New York we would call the second golden age of cocktails was coming to the fore, really from the late 90s through 2010, 2015, the exploration, aside from a lot of speakeasy style cocktail bars, was what were they drinking then in terms of the first golden age of cocktails, really mid 19th century up until Prohibition, and in many cases, frankly, through Prohibition. And so in that regard, it was obvious that in the heartland of rye whiskey production, Maryland, Pennsylvania, really through the Northeast, and in some cases, historically, 19th century wise, into the Midwest, that there were higher rye mash bills. And we weren't going to lock ourselves into some historic style, but we wanted to be well educated as burgeoning rye whiskey producers of where we might seek sort of our paramount guidepost, which is flavor.
Yeah.
And so off we began back in 2011, working with farms in upstate New York. For those that might not be familiar, Brooklyn is just over the East River from Manhattan. And if you were in Union Square here on 14th Street in Manhattan, it would take you 20 minutes to get to the distillery door to door by subway, by tube. So it's not far, but it is a distinctively different neighborhood that is both residential, but by necessity and legally also built for commercial purposes and specifically manufacturing, so that we're legally able to do what we want to do.
I mean, there's quite a journey with this rye that I'd love to go into. But before we completely move on from just like to say, like, I've got a bottle of this just to hand. I've always got a bottle of this to hand. It's the Dorothy Parker gin, if that's too quick for the
Thank you. I'm glad you have that too.
We've when that first came to the UK in 2013, that stuff's dynamite. So always got a bottle of that to hand. So. But let's talk rye.
Great.
Because you've gone, well, I suppose there's two things. I don't know. I mean, you'll tell me Dave doesn't want to be left out.
I was just looking for a bottle over the back there because I've got some New York Distilling rye in the back here as well.
But yeah, I mean, you'll help me out with the sort of timeline of how this happened. But I mean, you ended up on this extraordinary quest to find this sort of like this heirloom variety of rye that you've ended up
Yes.
using.
Happy to share that story.
There's kind of a whole New York Empire rye standard which has been created along the way as well.
It is. There's a few parallels. I brought one visual aid with me here, and the rye you're drinking today, the Jaywalk bonded rye, is made from Horton rye. And Horton, to bring it to your guests and to you as well, in a geographic sense, is a prominent family that I can trace back to the 15th century in Leicester, England.
Oh, wow.
And in the late 17th century, they moved from Leicester. I could not tell you exactly why, but I assume there were some religious reasons. And they moved, came across the pond, and ultimately helped settle a city that's just north of New York City today called Rye, New York. And if you went to survey 100 people in Rye, New York today, I guarantee you that none of them would know the context that the name of their city comes because it was all rye farmers. And so the Horton family of Leicester, ultimately one of the forefathers of the city of Rye, New York, had no fewer than 7 integrated farms in the area as the crow flies in about 30 miles, all the way out to the Atlantic Ocean. And one of their cash crops was the family hybrid they created here, eponymously named Horton. And I give the demonstration here simply to see, so you can see what the difference is between the rye we're using and conventional rye. There's absolutely nothing wrong with conventional rye.
Yes.
It makes great whiskey, the whiskeys that I grew up on. But when you're in a business our size and you're trying to do something fun and hopefully exciting, not just for ourselves, but to share it with other people, you want to be purposefully different. And our access point was discovering this rye really back in 2009, before we incorporated as a business at a unique and grandiose college of agriculture at a prominent university here in New York called Cornell. It's one of the Ivy League schools. And they happen to have a small subgroup that focuses on saving seeds of lost and forgotten varieties. It could be fruits, it could be vegetables, it could be trees, flowers. They are the seed savers group. And we enlisted their help to do the research with a simple goal from our fascination, which was to see if there might be a unique variety of rye native to geographic New York State here in the United States. So that was the simple premise. Yeah, we can buy rye. We can buy New York rye, New York corn. Some of it's conventional. We have other farmers who are able to create hybrid ryes on their own. But wouldn't it be unique if we could step back into history and rediscover something, as I said, that was lost and forgotten? And lo and behold, the Cornell crew came back and they actually identified a few varieties. But Horton passed all the tests ultimately. The real sexy part of the story, I need a drink for this part. The real sexy part of the story is that we received from this seed bank the sum total of 10 seeds. That's it.
Mad. Yeah.
10 seeds.
Wow.
And so anyone can do this. We do not own Horton Rye. You can call the seed bank and get 10 seeds too. We just happened to start in 2009. And it was about 2010 that we got the seeds. And then we set out to seeing if they were able to thrive in a range of tests. They started literally on a windowsill in 2 planted pots. And then from there, they went to greenhouse test, hoop test, the covered hoops that you might see on a farm scenario, and then ultimately open field tests. So from those 10 seeds, last July's harvest was 300 acres of Horton rye. So comment as you will. You can call us quite mad. All that mattered to us is that we were able to have fun with it. And the truth is, while I'm a whiskey maker and a cocktail expert and a burgeoning drinks historian, it was really our farmer, Rick Peterson. And I would call him an agronomist as well as farmer. And Rick knew right away from even the first inkling of the potted seeds that this would have a different flavor component than conventional rye. The seeds are smaller. So, from a economic standpoint, you're not really getting the same volume. That's one of the keys. It's about a third of the size. You're getting a third fewer seeds. You need a third more to, let's say in some context, achieve the same volume as the head of conventional rye. Again, they both have their flavor attributes. But for us, sort of going nose first and fully into the deep end on our interest in Horton, was that we knew through the farm and the farmer's knowledge of grains that we were going to have something unique and interesting based on the sugar component in this seeds of this particular rye. And I would say from the time we got the 10 seeds from Cornell, it took 5 years just to have enough to start distilling. In that first year, we may have distilled 32 to 35 barrels of rye. All of our barrels are 35-gallon, essentially 200 milliliter char number 3, oak barrels. And so after 5 years, we were able to start distilling. And now today, 2026 into 2027, we have several thousand barrels of Jaywalk rye, as we now call it, aging underfoot. And it's been an extraordinary experience. People say, well, what do you need to do to make stuff like this? I say, you need some money, it's for certain. You need patient investors, but you need an internal patience to say, this is going to be many points of discovery. I can tell you that, and earnestly and honestly, when we first opened the distillery, I thought to myself, because there were so few brands of rye whiskey available, we're going to launch a 2-year straight rye whiskey. There are very few straight rye whiskeys. We'll launch a 2-year rye, and these will be our hallmarks and our foundations for creating rye whiskey brands at New York Distilling Company. And in truth, at 2 years, the whiskey wasn't bad, but I couldn't look you or anyone else in the eye and say it was good either.
I'm sorry. I'm going to disagree with you because we bought 3 of those casks of 2-year-old rye, and it's absolutely
okay. Well, I appreciate
Applejack casks.
Well, that was it. I was about to say, I believe they were finished. Yes.
Yes.
So it had a little, I'd be honest, it had a little cover to it. But at 3 years is when we started, because we wanted to be authentic in the UK as well. At 3 years, we started shipping over our original rye called Ragtime Rye, which we have since discontinued now that we have our stock of truly aged and aging rye for Jaywalk. But
Ragtime wasn't a whiskey, was it?
It was rye whiskey.
Yeah. Was it a lower ABV Ragtime? No.
No, it was.
Are you thinking of the rock and rye, Dave?
Rock and rye.
That's what I was thinking of. Yes.
It's like a sort of a liqueur, isn't it? Like a stick of rock plus rye type.
Like a bottled old fashioned at the time.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, nice.
But this has been not painstaking, but joy-staking at a point now where we don't touch these barrels until they're 6 years old. The bonded that we're sharing together, and I'm happy to discuss that category if you like, is all 9-year-old. And these bottled and bond batches are at most 6 barrel blends at a time.
Six barrels.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm writing this down. Sorry. Nerd.
And the bonded is by law at 100 proof.
Yeah.
And there are a few tenets, if you'd like, I'll rattle them off quickly just so everyone's on the same page. There's the Bottled and Bond Act, a federal act of the United States government, which comes into the play in the 1890s. And it was a time where prominent distilleries were looking for ways to increase their profitability And for some reason, they decided that the best way to do it would be to add filler, artificial filler. I could not tell you why, but the filler turned out to be, in many cases, chemicals. And the chemicals ended up making people sick, and in some cases, people died. And it was the first time in U.S. history that the federal government stepped in, if you will, in the sense of consumer protection, and basically said, this can't happen. We're going to now oversee everything. You've screwed up. We're slapping you on the wrist. Here are the new rules, whiskey distillers. And the ones that are most prominent were, and continue to be, that the whiskey must be a minimum of 4 years old. You must own the production from start to finish. You cannot buy whiskey and call your brand bottled and bond, or as we do, bonded, unless you own every step of that process of whiskey production. So in other words, we buy the grain from our farmers. We don't own the farmland. But from that point on, we own every part of the process from start to finish. 3, the whiskey itself must come from the same season of the same year. So we have several blended whiskeys that are a range of years. Bottled and bond must be all from not only the same year, but the same season. In U.S. distilling law, there are 2 seasons. The first is January to June, and the second is July to December. And they wanted to make this a little strenuous, a little onerous, not just to slap distillers on the wrist, but to say, if you're going to be serious about this, you've got to follow these protocols. All of those that I've just listed are still in place today. The one that's not, and the reason it's called bottled in bond or bonded, is that a distillery or a whiskey warehouse is a bonded facility. We literally pay the government in advance a bond. So I can't remember, frankly, what our bond is, but the bond correlates directly to how much whiskey we are allowed to age at any given time. You can always increase the bond. The government's happy to have our money, but you have a bonded facility. And the one practice that's no longer in place is that the distiller at that time, after the Bottle and Bond Act, had to pay for a federal agent to unlock the federally approved lock, if you will, on the front door of the distillery, let all the employees in for the day, and at the end of the day, after everyone exited, they would lock the door behind them. Now you think, well, it must have been very official. There are some artworks, some drawings and paintings. I imagine, it wasn't like they were sitting at their computer behind a desk, that they came in with their newspaper, sat their bum on a barrel, and might have been drinking a dram or two during the day. And yeah, they were paid for it. So, okay, I'll initial it. I was here. But it was part of not just the lore, but the practice and expense of making bottled and bond whiskey. And it was the original introduction in American whiskey production of a tamper-proof seal over the top of the bottle. I can show you, we sort of have a remnant of that on our bottle. And it was literally to say to the consuming public, when you go and purchase your bottle, that seal better be whole all around to give the consuming public confidence that the whiskey they were purchasing was safe to drink.
It must have been one of the first ever food safety standards in the world.
Yeah, it certainly was in the US.
So there wasn't really much consumer protection in the UK until the 1970s, really. But I was trying to dig into that because it was what involved 1897, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
1890s. Yeah. Yeah, it's well, the first ever food safety standard, and that's whiskey. That's kind of cool, huh?
Now, I'll say all of this is great fun. It's great story. But whether, and you were speaking earlier about straight whiskey, bonded whiskey, all the different categories, it means we've applied a certain technique. We've applied the certain rules and regulations that adhere to these different categories. What it doesn't mean, and I think this is very important, is that the whiskey is any good. So there's plenty of straight whiskey it's okay, mediocre maybe. There's plenty of bonded whiskey that's just okay. The real effort, in addition to adhering to these rules and regulations, in my opinion, is the skill set of a term we really didn't use until we were fully engaged in growing, distilling, and aging the Horton rye, and that's blending. And in all accounts, the bonded whiskey is a concerted blend, and why we limit it really to 6 barrels at a time, so that we have complete control on the flavor notes and aroma too that we're searching for amongst a range of barrels. We might start with 50 and winnow that down to 6 for a finished bottle and bond.
Let's read some tasting notes, eh? See if people think it's a good
Let's do
whiskey.
that.
Great. Real Boinga is was getting a pinch of ginger off the bat. We've got Clive Hampton, who's into dark chocolate country. He's got some fruit, some Christmas cake even. We've got some spicy vanilla, some honey, some butterscotch. Callisto's just started with "Oh my," and then a separate message. This is great. So I think you got a fan there. Some more delicate honey, some fresh green grass, some brown sugar, some damsons.
Damsons is an interesting one.
Malt Romager's finding it rich and earthy. He's getting he's going to some earthy spice here. He's saying nutmeg, garam masala, cumin, but with caramel and maple syrup and toast. Malt Romager's pointing out, it's quite soft for a rye. Obviously, it's a different beast of rye, which I'm sure Alan will comment on in a second. We've got some herbs from Mark and Tucker, a bouquet of herbs and some more chocolate. We've got some more fruits being named. Plums prunes.
Great.
Is Malt Romager just putting their finger on now. Yes, so some good notes in there, not your normal rye, as
it's not, and it really does. It adheres to my thought. Honestly, about the influencing of concerted blending. This is not okay. These barrels are ready. Let's dump it and bottle it, and we'll ship it off to you. It is each batch is tasted for specific hallmarks. I'm delighted to hear the tasting notes of the group because I really prefer not to give tasting notes of my own, because then it becomes influential. I made it. Here's the whiskey. Don't you taste these categories? I also love, and I'm grateful, and thank you for everyone participating on the specificity that you've provided in the notes. The hallmark you've nailed on the head as a group. It's honey. And that is a hallmark. I could cry here in front of you. That is a hallmark of Horton rye. The other is the range of fruits, sometimes a little bit more esoteric and tropical, which is why my ears peaked at damsons, which you can find occasionally here, but there's no damsons like there are in the UK for certain. Sometimes the plum relation was very striking to me. I will say I often find apricot skin more than flesh, sort of the acerbic acid on the nose, and the first entry when you bite not quite ripe apricots is something that's a hallmark. And all of these are undulating undertones in Jaywalk rye and in our bonded version. And while there were some comments, what I'm also gratified by is that it wasn't a litany of spice. Of course, there is some spice. Garam masala is great. Nutmeg is great. I would nutmeg, cinnamon, clove, that trio plays very nicely in the aged Horton rye. But one of our paramount concerns, as I live and breathe, is to belie the assumption that nearly 100% of the people that we get to interact with categorize rye whiskey as spicy.
Yeah.
And it's a pleasurable fight, but I would argue, playfully or otherwise, with anyone that our rye is spicy writ large. It can be one of the complementary notes, but we're really blending to say, look at this interesting fruit context. A lot of your comments about the sugar range, and I would say some of them are here too, the range of caramel qualities, whether it's not really dark caramel, but sort of a medium peek over the cliff fruity caramel that I think is very nice. That is really just from time in the barrel. I think in our case, a conscientious use of 53-gallon barrels. We have played with different chars, and we use a few different cooperages. So while I say it's char 3, there are variations and differences between the different cooperages that we've used, even though we order char 3s. But at 53 gallons, and similar to Virginia, we're not so far away, a few hundred miles, that we lose 3 to 5% a year to evaporation. We lose about the same amount in the first 3 months, depending on the time of year for barrel entry, to absorption. So at 9 years for the bonded that we're tasting together, it's a considerable amount of loss. I lose no sleep over that. That's a glorious thing. That's where the flavor comes from for us. Because as that volume diminishes in the barrel, the oxygen interplay becomes increasingly significant. So that in 9 years, to be specific, we've probably lost somewhere between 35 and 45%. There's a lot of headspace in these 53-gallon barrels for a hearty oxygen play this time of year. We're in a cool spell. We just came through a heat wave, but we're in a cool spell. But summer is a glorious time when the staves are swelling a bit for us, and a lot of entry points for oxygen to influence the aging whiskey.
Fantastic. I'm slightly conscious of time, Alan.
Sure.
But I just wanted to run through a couple more comments, because there was, I have now spotted that, who was it? Was it Malcolm? Somebody did mention tropical fruits. But also I liked the comment from Clive Hampton, who said, I don't actually usually like rye, as I find it too harsh, but this is more restrained and complex, and I'm really enjoying this. So there you go.
Thank you, Clive.
Dave, you're quiet. Dave the rye guy.
I'm just loving it. Yeah, I'm just looking back through my note. I mean, we bottled 3 casks of New York rye, and we definitely had ragtime rye out when I first started as a part-timer for. Yeah, this is lovely. This is absolutely. I mean, I knew it was going to be anyway, because I'm a huge fan of the stuff that I tried, and certainly the 3 casks. We bottled 2 Applejack casks and 1 Black Ops cask.
Oh, yes. Yes, that was a great cask. There were only 2 of those ever made.
And I've got a couple of bottles of them here somewhere, and I was just kind of look for them, just so I need some more. The only question I was going to ask was, please can I have some more, because this one's evaporated. The Angel Share is high today in here. Yeah, this is superb. I knew it would be, but six barrels. That's unreal. Yeah. That's such a small. I mean, as an independent bottler, we're as boutique as we always come.
Yeah. I mean, there's not a limit. I mean, there is ultimately a limit. We're not near the limit of volume we have to make the Jaywalk bonded rye. But when you do this and have the patience, I really feel that time is on our side, and so we want to put in good parameters to conscientiously taste and blend to finish.
So all of your rye whiskies today have been from this heritage rye grain.
That's the foundation of all of our whiskey. Yes.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
Yes, I think there's another version, isn't there, which is like 75%, but the entire rye component is the heirloom. And this has got...
We do a cast strength single barrel that's called Jaywalk Heirloom Rye. And we call Horton an heirloom because we don't own it. We got the 10 seeds and we have the acreage of it growing on an annual basis now. But our fervent hope is that long after we're gone, that Horton Rye exists in this context and specifically for American rye whiskey.
Goodness, why wouldn't it after you get a taste? So thank you so much, Alan, for joining us.
Cheers, gents. Thank you.
And yeah, hopefully if you're able to stick around, we'll see you shortly.
It'd be my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much. You're on control, Dave.
Lovely to see you, Alan. It's
You're not going to take me out this
Alan
time,
away
Dave.
at the end. Yep. No, I try and remember not to. My laptop is starting to get a bit warm.
Classic, yeah.
Today.
Yeah, Malcolm is also
It's just you and
saying,
I now, isn't it?
Dave,
Yep,
that
okay.
one you'll like. He's saying the first food safety laws in the UK, as far as I can tell, was introduced in 1266.
1266.
Okay.
Wow.
The assize of bread and ale regulated the quality and weight of bread and beer. So there you go. If it wasn't whiskey, it's beer.
It's bread and beer, but I mean, bread and beer and whiskey, they all come from the same thing. Yeah.
It's
Consumer
like,
protection.
it's like the oldest recipe in the world is from like ancient Egypt for beer, isn't it? It's
Yeah. Well, I'm here as a guest now, aren't I?
Yes, sir. Yes, you are. Our third whiskey is the Brothers Bond Bourbon. But I mean, maybe we should just explain a little bit about the many hats that you wear, Dave.
Oh, the many hats that I wear. Yes. Well, I started off at Atom, Master of Malt, Atom Group, as the boutique whiskey brand ambassador as my part-time role with the business. My background is of a whiskey enthusiast, a whiskey blogger who just appeared at every whiskey show in the UK, who wrote a little whiskey blog, who turned up at everything I was invited to. And I think the first show I ever worked was for Chip Tate with Balcones, which was one of the Maverick drinks portfolio a long time ago. And I've been, let's say, I left my engineering career 10 years ago this year to talk about whiskey. And since we bought the business back, Atom Group bought the business back from the International that bought us for 5 years, my role has expanded to be the whiskey ambassador. So I talk about lots of things, and Virginia Distilling Company is one of the brands I talk about. Kiru Finnish Rye Whiskey, you've seen me talk about. Brothers Bond, you've seen me talk about. Boutique Whiskey, Master of Malt, Darkness, Wormtub. Any whiskey we produce or any whiskey we represent under Maverick Drinks, or anytime you ask me to come and talk about a distillery because you hadn't got a guest lined up. So I think I was
sometimes I just say, Dave, you want to come have a chat? Yeah.
The last time I was on for no brand, well, for not one of our brands, I was Talisker, wasn't I? I was talking about Talisker. So I'm just a whiskey nerd, a whiskey geek who spends most of his waking life talking and reading and writing about whiskey. There we go.
Apparently, they're pouring Brothers Bond at the Elysium in Manchester as well. So
yes,
the third Brothers Bond I've tasted this month. Malcolm says, "I'd love." So is this the third, as in a new one, or it's? I think
there are only 4 SKUs in the country, as far as I'm aware. There's the straight bourbon. There's the bottled in bond bourbon, which I think we've got tonight.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this one has been winning awards. I mean, they've all been winning awards, haven't they? This one got 98 and 97 points at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition in consecutive years, which is pretty extraordinary. It was in Fred Minnick's Top 100 Whiskies of the Year, that is just heavily sort of bourbon focused for the most part, but ended up being, I think I've got it here somewhere. It was 23rd. Came 23rd on his list, and I assure you, all the ones above it were more expensive. It's it's a great bourbon, I think, but I think it's important to sort of say that before you then explain maybe who's behind it, because otherwise, if that was your first question, you might assume something else. Yeah,
we should do that. Yeah, Brothers, founded by 2 actors, Ian Somerhalder and Paul Wesley, who bonded over bourbon over a TV program they starred in. They were stars, called The Vampire Diaries. Yes, it went straight over my head. I have no idea what we're talking about. but the Vampire Diaries, I only found out this week. I mean, he always told me that they bonded over bourbon on screen and off screen. I just thought, there's a lot of hanging around between shooting scenes. It's what I've heard. I don't know, but I've heard. And I just thought, well, maybe they're just drinking bourbon in the trailer. Apparently, they spend a lot of time on the TV series drinking bourbon. They spend more time when they're together. They're sticky. And so eventually, why don't we make our own? Why don't we bottle our own bourbon? And Ian is sort of the lead role of this company. They got together and they started. He was going to distilleries and buying or tasting samples and bringing back samples, and eventually started bringing cask samples back to his kitchen and blending them in his kitchen to create the bourbon they wanted to drink, which was the original Brothers in Bond straight bourbon whiskey, the 40% straight bourbon whiskey, which we talked about earlier. If it's a straight whiskey, American whiskey is at least 2 years old, and if it's under 4 years old, it's got to have an age statement on. But then anything that comes over here, whiskey, anything in the UK, the whiskey on it has to be 3 years old due to that pesky Immature Spirits Act, that the one I don't like. But we all know that. So
I've just explained to everyone how funny your face, Dave, when you're like, and apparently they're in some TV show. You have to understand, Dave just doesn't watch TV. Full stop. Like, it doesn't matter if you've watched the Vampire Diaries or not. Like, I was vaguely aware of it. Like, it was kind of a cult hit over here. I think we'll have to ask our American, guess how big it was in the US, because I think it was huge. But yeah, Dave doesn't watch TV. Full stop. So. Imagining you trying to get your head around it is really funny.
I don't know where people have time to watch TV. There's so many whiskey books to read.
That's right.
So yeah, they started with the straight bourbon, which is pretty cool. This is just a really small batch bourbon that they buy the cask, they blend it, which is pretty cool. They don't make whiskey, but neither do we as boutique whiskey. They buy bottles, barrels of casks of whiskey, a cask of bourbon, and marry them together to create the blend, which is pretty cool what they've done. However, the bottled in bond one, this is a 7-year-old that we've got here, bottled in bond, and it's a pretty unique mash bill. I haven't seen this anywhere. It's not easily available to get hold of. I have seen it once bottled by the distillery that manufactures this. The Bottled in Bond Act has to be at least 4 years old, 1 season, 1 distillery. The distillery must be named on the back of it, which it is. But this is a 7-year-old, and the mash bill in here is 51% corn, which is to be labelled as a bourbon, and 49% rye, which is unusual, especially as 10% of that rye mash bill is malted rye. The rye being malted to create the enzymes rather than having to bring natural enzymes rather than having to bring external enzymes into the mix. So yes, speaking to Ian, I had to go meet him because I had to make sure that he was passionate about the whiskey before I wanted to talk whiskey with him, and we sat for about half an hour, just over half an hour, just before his big press launch.
He was the real deal.
Poking him with it. Well, as soon as he saw me and I introduced myself to him, he said, "You're the guy we need to talk to, aren't you? You're the one everyone listens to." I said, "Look, I just asked some questions because it was bugging me." So we sat and talked, and I said, "I just needed to see the whites of your eyes to make sure you're passionate about this." He's not a celebrity. He doesn't want to be known as a celebrity, but he's a brilliant showman, that's for sure. And he's a jolly night, and he does whiskey. But yeah, Bottled in Bond,
so
7 years old.
It's from MGP, isn't it? Which is where a lot of bourbon that makes up a lot of brands. Or
I know Alan stated about the Kentucky distillery saving rye whiskey, but in my eyes, I'm pretty certain rye whiskey was saved by MGP by Larry, what's his name? Larry He was known as the godfather of rye, and he was the guy at MGP in Lawrenceburg in Indiana who kept rye whiskey mash being made. He went around and interviewed all the old distillers, because rye whiskey effectively died out with Prohibition. Prohibition came in 1920 and stopped all distilling, legal distilling in the United States of America. And we were just talking earlier, right at the beginning, that with over 3,000 distilleries in Virginia alone. Well, then you add up Pennsylvania, which was the home of rye, and New York State, which was a sea of copper. Every farm had a distillery, and New York rye, Pennsylvania rye, Maryland rye. Rye was the prevalent spirit of America right up until Prohibition. Well, Prohibition came along and 10 licenses were granted, and only 6 were taken up in those 13 years. 6 distilleries carried on producing, and one of them's you'll recognise today, the Woodford Reserve Distillery, that used to be the Pepper Distillery. I mean, 6 distilleries, and 5 of them were in Kentucky, I'm pretty certain. Only the Shenley Distillery, which was in Pennsylvania. So all those little tiny distilleries disappeared, and rye was almost lost. So much went on in American whiskey back in this history. But that bottled in bond.
These things, like so many whiskeys seem so permanent, and so we were talking very recently about how Irish whiskey nearly disappeared altogether. It's it's extraordinary.
It is extraordinary how circumstances can just destroy an industry. A prohibition was one, but the Irish was a set of circumstances that went followed on. Yeah.
We've got some comments. Let me go through some comments, because they've a couple of them made me chuckle. Maybe I'll just start with those. So obviously it's the Vampire Diaries, isn't it? The show they're in. Chris Leno said, "I used to watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer many years ago." Yeah, that's more my speed, Chris, I think. But then Callisto said about you not watching TV. Like, yeah, TV went downhill after they found the body under the patio on Brookside. Why am I? Okay, there's a bit of a delay. I'm like, why am I looking for a reaction from Dave? But yes, that really made me chuckle.
I grew up without TV, so it wasn't important. It's never been important to me.
No, well, I think there's probably a lot to be said for that. But let's have a look at some tasting notes quickly. There's so Callisto's getting some coconut and Malibu on the nose. Yes, the coconut jumping out for him. Sharon Atkins saying Mike really likes this one. Smooth vanilla and honey. Yeah, absolutely. That's what, those classic bourbon notes, isn't it? We've got bags of toffee, getting some menthol as well. Nice, yeah, getting the menthol note, Clive. We've got banana bread, butter, honeysuckle. Yeah, some great notes from Malt Rummager, saying how it's nice to have a straight bourbon as the contrast after this, having single malt and the rye. Yeah, we try.
We debated the order we should be tasting in these in. In my head we should be doing in chronological order, and it should have been rye, bourbon, and single malt, because that's how it. Single malt is the baby. I mean, the first single malt was
historian.
The first single malt in America, I think, was bottled and came to market in 1996. That's right, 1996. This bottled in bond batch is a little bit bigger than Jaywalk at 6 casks, 6 barrels. This is the second batch, I think, 2025 second batch. I'm pretty certain. This is batch number 3. Well, the batch number 2 was 130 barrels. So I think batch number 3 might be a little bit bigger than that. But Ian personally picked these barrels out, and they all come from one floor of the Rick House. He's sorted them out, and that's what. The only other time I've seen this mash bill, and it was just a straight bourbon. It wasn't a bottled in bond. So this has all come from, as we found out earlier, from one season, and I'm not quite sure which season it comes from, whether it's the beginning of the year or the end of the year, but it's one season of distillation.
Do you think is it all from one floor of Rick House, because that's where conditions allow it to age for 7 years? I mean, we were talking earlier about that's all of these
It would
whiskies
have.
are.
It's one season. That's one season's distillation. Put it in now, and
Oh
now
well,
it
that's
becomes.
true as well. From a purely practical point of view, yeah.
Yeah. So yes, it's they use char number 4 on all their casks, and their heads are char number 2. Certainly this one, the barrel ends are char number 2 on the heads. Yeah, I'm pretty certain of that. But yes, it's won lots of awards.
So I'm just dropping a little note to Alan, who's just saying, thank you so much to all our guests. He's going to have to run. Okay, going to go pick up his kids.
Or should we bring everyone back in and say farewell?
Or if you can catch him in time, we could do.
Let's do that. Let's bring
We
everyone
do have
in.
2 other whiskies to talk about, Dave.
Oh, okay. We do, don't we? We do.
Yeah.
So
So
should we bring Alan in and say farewell and say thank you? Let's do that quickly. Because he's got to run.
The thanks are mine. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
thank you for
Lovely to
joining us,
see you,
Alan.
Alan.
All the best. Hope to see you soon. Yeah.
Cheers, everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Right, we have got 2 more. Forgot about those. But
Yeah. Do you want to get onto them? Shall we get onto them? Yeah. So we've had a tour of America, but the remaining 2 bottles of Drams in the Box are obviously from Scotland. So yeah, a couple of single malts from Scotland. I think I'm going to talk Glenglassaugh. You're going to talk Bowmore. I really like this Glenglassaugh. It's a canny little distillery. It's up on. It's right by the coast. If you get a chance, again, we were talking about looking up the locations of some of these distilleries earlier with Virginia. Yeah, it might not be the prettiest distillery itself, Glenglassaugh, but the situation it's in is gorgeous. It's Speyside countryside one side, but then the sea is right there. You're right on the cliff above this gorgeous sand end bay and the sea, and that's obviously where it takes its name from, Sand End. It's got this coastal character in the whiskey, and then the casks used. You've got bourbon, you've got sherry, but you've also got the Manzanilla sherry casks, which also, Manzanilla is also a type of sherry, but it's a biologically aged one, which means it ages with a layer of floor yeast on top of the liquid in the cask, which sort of like protects it from the air, but also reacts with the liquid. So it's feeding on some of the sugar in the sherry, which basically all these things like change the characteristics of it. And that's made by the coast as well.
Manzanilla.
Yeah. And
so that's a Fino from a different area, though, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, like a Fino, but from a specific coastal area. Was it the San Liqueur de Barrameda? And
yes.
It is, that sherry itself has, as well as being kind of like dry and nutty, it's also slightly salty itself, and sort of citrus and fresh it can be as well. It's gorgeous. I mean, if you understand a little bit more about whiskey, it's really great idea to drink a bunch of different sherries.
Absolutely.
That's a top tip, I reckon. Plus, sherry's delicious.
Get into a tapas bar and drink sherry. That's what I'm going to say. Yes.
But that combo, and although it's a distillery that was closed for a long time, had a turbulent history like so many do. I think it reopened in 2008. It became part of Billy Walker's little trio of distilleries with Ben Riach and Glendronach for a little while, and then more recently, when they finally released their core range in 2023, Dr. Rachel Barry is overseeing all of these whiskies. This one's unpeated. The Port Soy is peated. It's a really nice, fruity, fresh whiskey that I highly recommend taking some time over. Our colleague Emma came back from the distillery after the launch just had so much good things to say about this and the other, the Port Sawyer release.
Right.
I went there a few years prior.
I've only driven past the distillery and taken some pictures of it because it is a bit out of the way, but it is in a beautiful location on the coastline there. And I couldn't get into it, whereas some distilleries you can get into, even if they're closed, not even open for the day, but you can drive into. Well, I could in the old days. Maybe you can't these days, but you could drive in and walk around and take some pictures. But I couldn't get in through the gate. Looks like everyone.
There's some good comments here. Some people saying thanks to Alan, of course. Yeah, great guests and education, absolutely. There's a question here from Ramager that you might be able to answer, Dave. There's a strange rule that stops UK distillers from calling their whiskey rye whiskey, even if it's made with rye. They're saying they think it's something to do with Canadian rye. But yeah, do you want to field that one?
Well, in Scotland, there are only 5 categories of whiskey, period. That's it. And single malt is 100% malted barley distilled in copper pot stills. That's it, period. So even if it was, and it's got to be 100% malted barley. So if it's 100% malted rye and you put it through a copper pot still, it will be a grain whiskey. Any other grain used in any distillation method becomes a grain whiskey. So it becomes a single grain. So Arbiki, Inchdanny rye, Bruichladdich have done a rye, Tininic have done a rye. They have to be labelled as a single grain whiskey in Scotland.
It's a bit like, we were talking earlier about, these categorizations not existing in America for single malt. Over here, it's such a no-brainer. You'd think, it should be a rye whiskey, but you would have to.
Never in a history, rye originates in the Black Sea and comes across to the rye belt, really northern Europe, Germany, Poland as a breadbasket of Europe, Scandinavia. It never really came over to the UK. I mean, the Romans brought rye to the UK. It was a dominant grain through Saxon times and Saxon Germany. Obviously, it would be, German rye. But then it sort of faded out to become wheat. And I could only ever find one reference to rye whiskey in Scotland from Bernard's 1896 book. And that was there was some rye Dundas, so that's only reference to, and that was a grain distillery.
Nice.
So with no history.
To do a bit of a deep dive into rye history, you should dig out Dave's blog post on Master of Malt, because there's been some categorization issues with some European rye whiskies as well, which actually does have more to do with Canada. That might be what our friends.
It's the EU regs. Yeah, it was the EU regs that have brought it in. Yeah, the rye in Europe, rye whiskey is a protected term. Europeans they wouldn't do it, and a long time ago, I think it's 2002 law that came in, or regulation that was written. I'm sure it was about 2002, because one of the rye producers in Europe, in Finland, went to see if they could get a category for rye whiskey in Europe, and then the EU said, "Oops, we've already promised it to Canada." Yes, there you go. I'm sure, and Canada, as usual, would say, "Oops, sorry, we didn't know anything about that either." But I'm sure it will all come good, certainly for Europe and England. But whether Scotland will change their rules to, there have been people fighting to change the Irish GI for a long, long time, and I see that's up for discussion at the moment. So that's kind of cool as well, that changing the mash bills for pot still whiskey, which is incredibly interesting.
Indeed. Well, before we go on a complete tangent, I'll run through a couple more comments, and then I think we should bring Amanda back if she's still waiting in the wings. We've got so Malcolm Tucker's saying that bottled in Bond Brothers Bond is definitely a step up from their straight bourbon. I did do the whole range a few months back, but I do remember this being kind of the standout. I mean, they do a really cool regenerative. Is that their rye? Regenerative grain.
Yeah, it's a regenerative grain bourbon.
And that's actually distilled somewhere else.
That's distilled in North Carolina, a different distillery. Yes.
Yes. They do have a rye, and then I think this is a
The rye is MGP rye, but it's not a straight rye because they blended rye and straight ryes and straight bourbons together to create an American blended rye whiskey, because them's the rules.
which I remember you grilling.
I jump straight away, because whenever I see American blended whiskey, I just think drain cleaner. But yes, it isn't, and I understand exactly what they've done, and it's cool, and it's very good.
It's actually cool when somebody does something just because they want to create a flavor profile rather than worrying too much about what they're then going to have to put on the label. If you know what I mean, like do the cool whiskey first, and then
worried about the branding about that at all. They just
worry about that down the line. Dave Walcock's looked up about Glenglassaugh's panoramic views. Yeah, absolutely, it's great, isn't it? We haven't spoken about Bowmore at all. Do you want to say something very quick about Bowmore, Dave?
Okay, Bowmore is in the capital, the bustling capital of Islay. Probably one of the oldest distilleries, 1779. Is what they say, but there's no evidence of whiskey being made there until a license was granted in 1816. However, vault number one vault, the famous vault number one, is closest to the sea, and it's right by the harbour. If you've never been to Islay, everyone has to go. It's just an amazing experience going to Islay. You have to drive from Glasgow all the way down that little peninsula. Or you get on the bus from Glasgow, and that drops you off at the ferry port as well. It takes forever. But that vault number one is part of the town's sea defences and dates back to the 1700s. And it's probably the oldest whiskey warehouse still in use in Scotland. You can go and swim in warehouse number 3. Because they Bowmore donated warehouse number 3 to the community, and it's now the sports and social, it's a swimming pool. But yeah, it's one of the few Scottish distilleries that malt their own barley. Obviously they can't do 100%, they couldn't keep up with that, but it's about 35% last time I spoke to them, 35% of their annual requirements, but they mix that with a malt from unpeated malt from the mainland, which ends up with about a 25 ppm in the peat. So quite a low peat. If you think of Lagavulin and Kalila, which is 35, and everything else is above that. Mm-hmm. The finished spirit's about 10 ppm in the malt, I seem to remember. This is brand new to me. Same with the Glenglassaugh. And I don't know much about Glenglassaugh at all, I must admit. It's I haven't tasted lots of them.
They used to be a 15-year-old darkest, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. That was the darkest, and that was a sherry. But that was coloured. I'm sorry, that was E150. So it was E150. I don't know anything about this one, but this is all European oak as far as I read briefly. European.
Yeah, which is part of the reason that separates this from the core range. Yeah.
Yeah. It's rather lovely, isn't it?
I was going to do this so quickly, I wasn't even going to put it in the glass, Dave.
It's a new whiskey discovery, and we like whiskey discoveries.
We do. When I met Dave when he was the Whiskey Discovery blog, yeah, absolutely. He was talking about him going to all these shows and things and turning up all these events. Yeah, we go way back. We went to Islay together as well, didn't we?
Sorry,
we went to Islay together as well.
We've been to Islay together twice. Yeah.
But yeah, we must bring if Amanda's still there, Dave. We must bring Amanda back in.
Oh, Amanda's cool. Let's get Amanda in because both guests were very cool. But I did get to hang out with Amanda in London for a weekend, and that was one of the best weekends.
It was lovely. I would do that all over again.
I spoke to Adam in our team as well earlier, and he was saying, "Oh, you've got Amanda on. Oh, that's really cool. She's great." Yeah. So.
Yeah. Adam managed to come and meet you, didn't he, at the show as well?
You did. Give him a hello from me.
We'll do. Yeah. Now it almost seems a bit mean having only one sort of proper guest here, but we always ask our members what their favourites from the box were. So we'll give them a second to to start
I
posting.
promise not to be offended. You had a very
Yeah, I know,
light,
right?
delicate. You're safe with me if you don't say mine. I'm good. I might not even say that was my favorite
But
of this lineup.
I mean, I suppose that we always try and come up with a bit of a question to ask our guests, and I think in this heat, it really is, you know, what asking people who are more used to it, you know, what's the drink to be drinking? You know, what's your beat the heat kind of serves? It doesn't have to be, to be honest, to take any tip right now. It doesn't even have to be drink based. But if it is whiskey based, that's even better.
What would you do with a Virginia Distilling single malt in the heat?
Yes, I do have a weird little trick. So I think a lot of people love highballs, and I do too. But I will, instead of diluting my highballs with ice, sometimes I'll just stick the whiskey in the freezer for a little bit and not dilute it very much, because that's a nice route. So you can still use your soda or your ginger beer or whatever you want with it. But that's really refreshing and lovely.
It's a great idea. We had because we were talking a bit about highballs last month, and I was trying to sort of big them up, and some of the members were saying like, I'm not totally sold on it, and it was interesting because the brand ambassador we were talking to was kind of like he'd been a bartender, and he was saying that, you know, whiskey highballs hadn't really like cracked the on trade in the UK in the same way as, like, obviously in Japan they've got them on tap and it's an institution. But there you go. So all of you saying you're not sure about highballs, just whack your whiskey in the freezer for a bit. That's genius. There you go.
Yeah,
I've never put whiskey in the freezer. I've got I mean, obviously some spirits live in the freezer. Gin lives in the freezer for gin and tonics, but I've never put whiskey because I don't generally put ice in my whiskey, I must admit. But for cocktails, obviously, I love a highball and soda and sherry and all those sort of things, ginger ale, everything, coconut water, all lives in the fridge.
Yes. Well, what happened for me was I was trying, it's from St. George Spirits in Alameda, California. They call it the Baller Single Malt, and they make it specifically for highballs. And I had a highball with it and thought, it's a little too watered down for me. What if I just stick this in the freezer? And that was my first trial, and it solved that problem. And I just thought, okay, now I know.
Mine don't last long enough, to be honest, Amanda. Even when I've got mine just.
I opened this
so they don't
3 days ago. I shared it with my neighbor.
Yeah, of course. With a cigar.
I did not, but he did. Yes.
I saved the heel that you left me at the end of the show. I saved that just for a warm afternoon with a cigar, and it was perfect. It was an afternoon, evening. It wasn't a morning. It wasn't a morning. It was.
My other trick is with the humidity here. I don't know if that's as big an issue, but I do a lot of hiking. Electrolytes. So if you get a good electrolyte powder, you can put it in water or you can put it in other things, depending on if it's flavored or not. But you got to restore the electrolytes.
You put electrolytes up, yeah.
And then
we're not very practical with it. If it gets too cold or there's like a drop of snow, or like we all just like don't know what to do. If it gets too hot, we don't know what to do. We're just used to sort of like this band of like middling weather.
We're used to temperate island. We're a temperate isle, aren't we?
You are.
We don't normally get hot summers and cold winters, but all of a sudden we've had three big.
It's exactly what we were saying about maturation, though, isn't it? It's it's the temperate climate versus the.
Yeah, I'm wondering what's happening in Scotland, because the heat waves just hit Scotland, doesn't it?
It has. It's going to be interesting to watch this. I loved hearing you talk about the Bowmore cask houses. I've spent a lot of time in there, and they've even had their casks floating in the water. So yeah, they've had some extremes too, but not like.
Yeah, it's a cracking little distillery to visit, I must admit.
It's romantic. Yeah,
bustling city centre of Bowmore.
So bustling.
Was it? You got to spend your time in Lucci's. You must have been into Lucci's. The whiskey bar up there. I mean, all the ex-Bowmore managers are in there. I'm sure Harry Coburn's been in there when I've been in there. But yeah, all the characters come in and they have every bottle of whiskey.
Yeah,
all
it's timeless there
occasions.
too. You can blink and pretend you're 60 years back.
We have a question from Twisted Economics saying, what is the show in London that you keep referring to?
Oh, we were at Whiskey Live London down at Woolwich, I think it was the old fireworks factory down at Woolwich area, wasn't it?
That's
yeah.
what they called it. Yeah, it was cool. It was a cool venue. 2 days.
It was a great venue. Yeah, great venue.
Yeah.
And easy to get to and from on the Lizzie line, unless the Lizzie line isn't running.
It was very easy until the very last day exiting, and we thought we were going to get out ahead of everybody. We had a fun detour, though. We figured it out.
We had a fun detour. You ended up in a cab, didn't you?
I did.
And I waited for a train. Eventually got back to where I was trying to get to.
Yeah, I never take a cab if I can take the underground, but nope.
Everything stopped, didn't it, for a little while? Yeah, and that was a lovely day, but there was a cold wind running all the way through, wasn't there?
I enjoyed it. I would take that cold wind right now.
Yeah. What's that
I'm
other
not
show
gonna-
that's in? Is it the Tobacco Dock that has the sort of like the whole thing's like a greenhouse, Dave?
Oh, Tobacco Dock is North London, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, that can be exceedingly hot. It's another great venue, but they have they had a bar show in there this year, wasn't it? And it was they did have portable air conditioners.
It's the old it's where they do I don't know if they did it this year. It's where the BCB bar show was.
It was BCB, yes, it was BCB London. Yes, that's what it was. Yeah, they call it Tobacco Docks, but I wasn't allowed to smoke anywhere on there. So I took a cigar down there, and I thought I'd just sit out by the side of the canal where the boat is. And said, no, you can't smoke on anywhere. Oh, come on, it's Tobacco Docks. How ironic is that? I can even smoke a cigar on Tobacco Dock. Yeah.
Right, let's go through a handful of comments of the people who are still with us. Malcolm Tucker saying, yes, fault number one, lovely place to taste whiskey. The fools let me draw some drams from a cask back in April. Yeah, that's good stuff. Dave Walcott saying, I only tried the American whiskies in the box tonight, but I must say the winner is American whiskey. I scored each one equally. They all had individual character. I cannot pick an overall winner, which I think is just, they are all really good. If Andy was here, he'd say
American whiskey right there. You've had rye, you've had bourbon, you've had single malt. There is the history of American whiskey.
I love it.
We should have started with moonshine.
Pexman's got, he's saying number one's Jaywalk for him, number two, Virginia by a whisker. Dave Walker asking, he's decided to pour himself a dram of his Canadian corn from Boutique. There you go, Dave. Boutique shout out for you.
I like him a lot.
Chris Larry is saying, I'm going to go Jaywalk, but they are all delicious. That one just wins it. Tony has got Virginia as his favourite, Jaywalk second. We've got Mort Robin just saying, well, Amanda making the effort to stay on, and because I love the Mission VDC are on, it's got to be Virginia. And not just that, it is a perfect blend of Scotch and bourbon. There you go. Yeah. That's what we were talking about earlier, wasn't it? Nice. Mission accomplished. He's also saying, I was thinking of putting it in the freezer, but his whiskey, that is. But my freezer is the size of a small shoebox. Yeah. You've got to have room in there. Callista saying, all were great, very hard to separate them, but they're going with the Brothers Bond. It's a really nice bourbon, to be fair. We have got Malcolm Tucker, who loved the Virginia and has previously tried it and has bought a bottle of the cider and the Blue Ridge, so they're slightly biased. So, but also love the Jaywalk, yeah. Sharon Atkins, their favourite at their end was the Brothers Bond, but yeah, enjoyed them all, very drinkable. Clive Hampton's got a photo finish between Virginia and Jaywalk. Drank them both rather too quickly. And Malcolm saying, he loves Lucci's, and forgot to say he did also try the Courage and Conviction bourbon. Yeah, nice. Real Boing is saying he likes them all equally. Get off the fence, but I can't pick one. Yeah, so there's a bit of love all round, but certainly some love for Virginia there, Amanda.
That's a pretty
Thank you all. I love it. And thank you for having me on. This was so much fun. I really enjoyed myself.
No, and the guests make it, and you and Alan have been fantastic. We've very much enjoyed the evening, haven't we, Dave?
You and Alan have been fantastic. Yeah, I mean, it has been a journey across American whiskey, from rye whiskey at the beginning to Virginia, when we started with Virginia, which was where the first record of distillation happened. Yeah, it's kind of cool. That's an American whiskey journey that we've had this evening. And so good to see you again.
You too. I hope to see you in person before too long.
That'd be cool.
Well, thank you, Dave. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you to all our pour and sippers. And well, yeah, we'll see you at pour and sippers at least next month. Cheers, all.
Cheers.
Bye for now. Oh.